When the 6th Parachute Regiment left the sector between Bladel and Postel on September 22nd, the 245th Division took over this sector. This meant that this division had to cover the front line between Postel and Oosterwijk, a whopping 20 kilometers, which was way beyond its capabilities. A full-strength division would cover a front of maximum 10 kilometers, but the 245th Division was not even a proper frontline division. This division was raised in the summer of 1943 as a coastal defense division, which meant that it contained men who were only fit for guard duty, like older age groups, and convalescents who were no longer fully fit for frontline service. It was not only composed of low-grade troops, but it was also rather weak. It had 3 infantry regiments with only 2 battalions each. The Welsh 53rd Division, on the other hand, had fit frontline troops and was composed of 3 infantry brigades with 3 battalions each. The German overstretched 245th Division could in other words not hope to hold the front line against a determined attack by the Welsh Division. This attack was brewing, because on September 22nd the Welsh Division had captured Bladel and the Germans fell back on Reusel and began fortifying this village. Civilians were forced to dig trenches and landmines were laid around the village. There was even an accident in which a cart of landmines exploded in the middle of the village, causing civilian casualties. The Germans had their own reasons to hold on to Reusel. This village was a strategically important place because of the road between Antwerp to Eindhoven, which ran through the village, and the main road to Tilburg. If Reusel was taken, the Welshmen could roll up the front of the neighboring 719th Division, or cut off the 245th Division. It would, in other words, unhinge the German front and cause a general retreat. In order to prevent the situation from happening, the 2nd Battalion of the 6th Parachute Regiment was detached to deal with the situation. The 2nd Battalion was not chosen randomly. This battalion was in the best shape of all battalions of the 6th Parachute Regiment, and Mager had proven himself as a capable commander during the recapture of Geel. That's also the reason why Reinhardt was eager to have this battalion as Armeekorps reserve, and on September 24th he made clear in his orders to 245th Division that the battalion was to be returned as reserve as soon as its task was finished. The irony was that by that time the battle for Reusel had just begun. On September 22nd, the German front on the whole was folding back. The Canadian 2nd Infantry Division had established a bridgehead over the Albert Canal, and the Germans retreated behind the Dessel-Turnhout Canal to shorten their front. The next day, the British 49th Division began to move up to the canal, and the 53rd Welsh Division advanced towards Bladel and Reusel. The Allies had the impression that the German front was giving away, and that a concentrated push towards Tilburg could lead to a further German retreat or even a breakthrough. The Germans realized this too, and as a result, Mager's 2nd Battalion of the 6th Parachute Regiment was sent in to stem the tide. Meanwhile, the 160th Brigade of the Welsh Division deployed 3 battalions to attack in this sector. The 2nd Monmouthshire Battalion on the left, the 4th Welsh Battalion on the right, and the 6th Royal Welsh Fusiliers Battalion in the center. The 6th would advance directly on Reusel, while the 2 other battalions would advance on the flanks. In the morning of September 24th, the 3 battalions advanced. On the German side, the Fallschirmjäger of Captain Mager had been deployed in Reusel. Mager's battalion was deployed as follows: the 7th Company in the village center, while the 5th Company covered the west flank and the 6th Company the east flank, while the 8th Company was held back and contained heavy weapons like heavy machine guns and mortars. On the west flank there was a connection with a unit of Dutch SS men. When the British resumed the advance on September 24th, The Germans were in position and waiting for them. In the morning, the 6th Royal Welsh Fusiliers did not advance in mass, but split up and detached one company to probe the German defences, reaching the village centre. What followed was a vicious firefight, and the German paratroopers managed to drive back the Welshmen in the late afternoon. Thinking that the Germans had spent their force, the B and C companies were sent in to outflank the Germans, but the German paratroopers caught them and drove them back as well with their automatic weapons. The German paratroopers had scored a first offensive victory, but contact was lost with the neighboring Dutch SS unit. At dawn on September 25th, the British heavily bombarded Reusel to prepare their attack. It was a horrifying experience for the Dutchmen in their cellars. 7:30. I can't hardly describe events. It's like our house is being blown away from over our heads. We were shelled from all sides. It took at least another hour. At 11:15 it starts all over again. What had happened? In the morning the Royal Welsh Fusiliers tried to throw the Germans out of Reusel in fierce attacks after 2 intense bombardments. By noon it was however clear that the Welsh battalion had run out of steam. The Germans were even taking Welsh as prisoners at this stage. It was clear that reinforcements were needed to give new vigour to the Welsh attack. For this purpose, the 4th Welsh Battalion was brought in to execute an elaborate plan to capture Reusel. One company would attack head-on, while 2 companies would encircle the village from the south, and 1 company would complete the encirclement from the north. The Royal Welsh Battalion would attack in support. The brigade command put pressure on their battalion commander, because they ordered the village to be cleared in the morning of September 26th. The German paratroopers were meant to be encircled and destroyed. The Welshmen attacked the German lines relentlessly. What unfolded was vicious street fighting in which both sides fought over every house and even for every floor within the houses. Even after dark, the fighting went on unabated. The Welsh division had deployed searchlights to create artificial light by beaming to the clouds to light up the sky. The effect was called Monty's Moonlight, after Field Marshal Montgomery, and it enabled the troops to keep on fighting after dark. As a result, the fighting continued all night, while the village was burning. At 5 o'clock in the morning, on September 26th, there was only 1 company of German paratroopers left in Reusel, and it was at breaking point. They started to lose several dozens of their men as prisoners, including 2 officers. The Welsh sensed this, and they committed A Company of the 4th Welsh Battalion to break the back of the German defence. Meanwhile, B Company was poised to close in from the north to cut off the last escape route for the Fallschirmjäger to the west. The 2 remaining companies of Mager's battalion had been pushed back from the village during the night, and they were rallying to counterattack to relieve their comrades in Reusel. Around noon, the counterattack was set in with their heavy mortars in support from 8 Company, and the ring around the Germans inside Reusel was broken. This was a setback for the Welshmen, but the Germans had their own worries. They pondered that the ceaseless combat was sapping the strength of Mager's battalion, but withdrawing Mager's men would compel them to retreat altogether. For now, the Fallschirmjäger were indispensable for the defense of the sector of the 245th Division. The Battle of Reusel was gradually turning the village in a pile of rubble. Due to the fierce urban combat and the considerable losses on both sides, the Welshmen began to talk of a Mini-Stalingrad. Nevertheless, their attacks continued unabated and concentrated around the village centre, which was dominated by the church. Alfred Sturm remembers. The 7th Company advanced towards the church and rectory, and ferocious house-to-house fighting began again. Tommy's resistance became more and more intense as we moved closer to the church. The fight for Reusel was a bloody battle of attrition, which both sides could not afford to continue for long. Both sides continually launched attacks and counterattacks. By the end of the afternoon of September 27th, the Welshmen had had enough. At 4:30, messages from division headquarters reached the frontline troops with the order to retreat. They would, however, not pull back without a final display of firepower. On September 28th, an impressive barrage of artillery and airstrikes was ordered, especially directed to the church, to give a final blow to the German defenders. It could, however, not conceal the fact that the Fallschirmjäger came out on top. Captain Mager was awarded the German Cross in Gold by General Student himself on September 28th for his actions so far. This was one step away from the Knight's Cross. Mager's men had withstood relentless attacks by an overwhelming force for at least 4 full days. As a result, his outfit was exhausted and had suffered significant losses. On September 24th, it had still 830 men, but by October 2nd, it had only 250 men left. Just like in Geel, 2 weeks earlier, they had stopped the main attack of a British division and had retaken a town after a fierce struggle. This time, the battalion had taken a heavy toll for its success. If you like my content, don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell to get notifications for new content.